That's no moon. It's a space station.
It's too big to be a space station.
Very bad feeling about this.
Developer Diary 287 has now dropped. We're going to be getting an in-depth look at the brand new flagship. Yes, it's not a station, it is not a megastructure, it is an actual ship of the NPC faction Minamar Specialized Industries that will be coming to Stellaris with the new DLC Stellaris First Contact. We'll also be getting a look behind the proverbial curtain at the new species portraits, or just outfit portraits I should say, for the Minamar Specialized Industries, and finally some in-depth look at the artwork behind the new Payback Origin, one of the 3 origins we have not seen very much from so far. I'll make sure to put chapters in the description so you can jump around wherever you would like. And in addition to that, some of the artwork originally on this developer diary was low resolution that got updated within about an hour and a half of the dev diary going live. I have replaced all of the artwork and tried to remove all of the pieces where I talk about trying to peer past the pixelation, but if I've left anything in there, I have to apologize. Let's dive in and find out what's going on. Before we dive directly into the dev diary itself, I want to mention a small piece of news, a tweet by the game director Stephen Murray, which shows off a rework to the Alien Zoo building. So in the last week's dev diary, we got to see the new devolving beam that can return any species to monkey. Now though, we're going to be getting some fantastic jobs for those devolved aliens that have become pre-sapients, or possibly any livestock you've got lying around in your empire. Yes, the Alien Zoo is being reworked, it will still grant an entertainer job, but now it will grant a zookeeper job and protected fauna, or alternatively, conserved fauna. What is going to happen is you're going to have pre-sapient or livestock pops. They will need some food or minerals to upkeep them, and they will produce lots and lots of amenities. Yes, that's right, your pops will be able to head on down to the zoo and pet the definitely safe, devolved pre-sapient species that you've gone out and conquered around the galaxy. Oh, what joyous times for you. By the look of things, this produces quite a lot of society research, a tiny amount of unity, and a boatload of amenities, whilst also reducing your amenities usage, your housing usage, and the political weight, I have to assume, of those conserved pops or protected pops. Conserved probably are going to be the ones that you don't eat, though of course sometimes people do like to keep livestock at the zoo, I suppose. Whatever you believe, it's definitely nice that we're going to be getting a rework to the Alien Zoo, making it much more viable as an actual building we'll see in the game. I always like it when they rework some of these old buildings like this. Of course, this also has some very amusing interactions with warrior culture, and possibly is giving us the best job icon in the game, or at least that's what the game director wants us to think. I must admit, it's a very cute icon. Little furry beast with the Spartan or Greek style hoplite helmet. Absolutely amazing. Those gladiatorial beasts don't actually seem to give us much, just 1 amenity per pop. I hope those numbers get reworked so it's actually rather worthwhile, otherwise why wouldn't I just uplift these folks and put them in a proper warrior culture job, other than possibly flavor. Today's developer diary comes fresh from the pen of Lloyd Drake Brockman, one of the concept artists on the Stellaris team. He has worked extensively on the First Contact DLC and is very excited to share the artistic journey that this pack took him through and the entire art team. Specifically, today we're going to be discussing the development of Minamar Specialized Industries, a new non-player faction with a very, very interesting visual style. He was quite involved in designing most of their visual elements, and he believes that they have ended up with a great set of designs that are quite unique in the world of Stellaris. He's going to take us through the design journey for all of this interesting stuff, and what I find quite interesting as well is he makes some notes and references that answer questions we have not been able to find answers for until now. Specifically, what on earth the image here actually is. At the beginning, I thought it was a megastructure, and then I started thinking it was some sort of star-based or observation post, and now we have been told all of that is wrong, and it is in fact a ship. That is right, later on we're going to have it revealed by Lloyd that this is a ship, and we have some specific pointers, markers, information. We can see where the engines are, where the turrets are, where the strikecraft bays are, all of that wonderful stuff and more, so stick around for that. Now that previous image is apparently the Minamar Specialized Industries flagship. This is the first element that Lloyd worked on. It was a complicated design challenge, and it formed the aesthetics for the Minamar Specialized Industries as a whole. Not only were there a few gameplay requirements which restricted the design, it has a unique visual language which gives the player insight into the nature of MSI themselves. Corporate Vaporwave was the brief for the ship's general aesthetic, a combination of bright neon classical architecture and modern corporate sensibilities. These early sketches we're currently looking at, well, from them you can see some of the elements have been incorporated into the final design. As Lloyd himself mentions, down in the bottom right here, that is pretty much a top-down view of the final design that we ended up getting. This ends up becoming a more chosen sketch of this flagship. Again, I'm stressing the word ship. It is a moving vehicle, very different to any of the other vehicles we have seen in Stellaris, but of course it's space. As long as you can strap an engine on the darn thing, it can probably go in any direction you want. From the top view, Lloyd worked out a side view of the design. He was very keen for the ship to involve some sort of central rotating element. This ship would move around quite unlike most of the other ships in the game, and he wanted to show that it had some sort of unique drive system. Clearly, with this kind of design, you would expect the engines on a starship to be at the bottom end of this, with the scimitar blade looking things to be at the front. Instead, this whole thing moves kind of as a platform through space, which is, from a space point of view, absolutely fine. It probably doesn't matter where you put the engine specifically. It just doesn't look so normal compared to the other ships we have seen in Stellaris so far. But I'm actually definitely here for it. It's a giant floating weapons platform. Look at those turrets you can see quite clearly on the ship here in these early concept designs. Yeah, it's pretty menacing that this appears above a pre-FTL civilization's homeworld. Yikes. And then we come to the final image, the final design of this ship. Let's break down all of the interesting elements we have here. So the engine is this central dais that comes out of the middle of the craft. It's got some interesting light features going on there. It looks really weird. I assume this isn't a reactor, but an FTL engine itself. This is how our ship will fly around not just the system, but also out to other systems as well in the galaxy. This is very reminiscent of the central engine core of the Event Horizon ship from the movie of the same name. I'm sure nothing could possibly go wrong with it. Following down from that, we get these turrets. Now, there are 6 turrets on this craft. It is definitely a weapons platform. That is a lot of firepower, plus 3 strikecraft hangars, 1 for each of these scimitar blades. We also have some very aesthetically pleasing rings joining the turret sections, where we have the living quarters, the windows, very much looking like the kind of Star Trek Next Generation, so the Enterprise's windows or just Starfleet windows that you get on the edges of the saucer sections. Overall, I think it is a very beautiful design, to be perfectly honest. I am very excited to see this in the game. I am somewhat unhappy though that we won't be able to get our hands on it ourselves. I'm sure there are going to be mods that come out that do give it to us, but in the base game for now, this flagship is only going to be available to the NPC factions, the Minamar Specialized Industries. And if you're enjoying this video, please design a new concept for that like button. Now it's time to move on to the Minamar Specialized Industries specific uniforms. After the ship, the next thing that Lloyd looked at was the MSI portraits. It was decided early on that they were going to use an existing species from the game and dress them in a unique outfit. Therefore, the only thing that Lloyd had to do was concept the uniform. And if you haven't noticed yet, MSI are based on the Humanoid 3 portrait set. It's kind of the blue aliens with some ridges on their head, not quite full Klingon, but they've got kind of, it's a mixture between elves and humans with a bit of Klingon thrown in there and blue. I almost feel like there is a Star Trek race that these are based on, but right now off the top of my head, it's simply not coming to mind. The first step was initial sketches. As you can see from these beautiful sketches, there are some definite design elements they incorporated into the final design. A, on the furthest left, does look very close to what we end up with. It's a very Angemon from Digimon style of helmet and outfit, or possibly one of the Digivolutions like Magna Angemon. Now on the furthest right, on the complete opposite end of this spectrum, we've pretty much got a spectrum here of designs. We've got a chic business suit, there's a tie there are some funky 80s style glasses or sunglasses. Yeah, that's a definite different direction. I for one am very glad we went with more of the angelic look, given what we know about the Minamar Specialized Industries. Then Lloyd chose to sketch out these outfits symmetrically, even though all of the portraits in Stellaris are angled to the right. This helped him sketch faster, and it gave him less to think about during the process of drawing. He knew he wanted some kind of mysterious head covering, but did not know whether to go down a more mystical or a more corporate route. In the end, the design for the robes was largely taken from a different piece of art, and the helmet that he had sketched above was added to make up the whole uniform. And that brings us to the final sketch, which is the species humanoid 03 with that interesting helmet on. Clearly some very corporate looking earpieces, and then the angelic style robe flowing down from the shoulders and revealing no hands, no arms, no nothing. I particularly like the futuristic ruff coming out here from the collar, which is not directly attached, it doesn't look like, but instead it is a halo that has been dropped down. That is a very beautiful little touch. All of it screams angel, even if that may not quite be the case. Once this final sketch was approved, Lloyd continued to refine it. He also required male and female variants, so added another version of the outfit. Which brings us to these two interesting uniforms. Now that ruff has now been removed, and it looks like they placed it behind the head as kind of a larger throwback to a halo motif again. Everything super angelic, though those caps, those visors, I'm not entirely sure what their purpose is. It seems like they offer some sort of specialized vision. Perhaps it's a VR environment they live in. There does seem to be some sort of camera apparatus on the front, so clearly they can see and they're not completely blinding themselves. These aren't Jedi Temple Guard helmets, I hope. But yeah, very interesting stuff. This is the point where Lloyd handed these concepts over to another artist who finalized the painting and prepared the asset for animation. A lot of work goes into each of these portraits to bring them to a high standard and ensure they work properly with all of the game's systems, and Lloyd says he could not be happier with the final results. This is the final finished portrait by Alec Beals, who I have to assume is another member of the concept art team, possibly the animation team. What will have gone into this, or what we finally see on our screens, is they'll have dissected the image, as we've heard about in previous dev diaries, into lots of components that can then be individually animated. That's also why if you ever try to dive into the game files, you'll find that most of these portraits are a mishmash of lots of components that together provide the alien, but individually make pretty much no sense at all. We have the characters, the actors are here, but we still need a stage for this performance. So we need to make a diplomacy room, or at least Lloyd needed to make one. These characters needed somewhere to take their video calls, and it was his job to work on the MSI diplomacy room. This asset was actually something he worked on all the way to its final in-game state. He imagined that the MSI representatives would be calling from on board their flagship, but he didn't want to make it too specific in case they were somewhere else. Either way, given the design of their ship and outfit, an over-the-top opulent hall seemed to be fitting. He had a vision in his head of what he wanted the scene to look like, so his initial sketch was extremely rough, just enough to see that it was going to work. From this initial concept sketch, Lloyd went over to the 3D and built the entire scene, paying attention to the materials and lights to give the space the feeling of grandeur that he was after. He also made sure the pillars at the top of the room disappeared off into infinity, or off the top of the image towards a distant ceiling. This was in order to make the space feel larger than what you can actually see. The busts that flank the hall are not playable species. That's an important note as well here. We have a bunch of brand new species never before seen, which we also can't actually play. I hope they manage to include these in some future DLC or release though. They could be quite interesting. The bird type species here, wow, I do think that is quite a cool one. Other than the human, of course, which we have all seen, they do appear in other places in First Contact, which is outlined in the image on your screens now. So as we can see, some of them appear in, for instance, different pieces of artwork all over the place. This is something Lloyd felt was a great way and a fun way to tie these elements of the story pack all together. From there, it was back to Photoshop for a final cleanup. As you can see, most of the bright reflections on the walls and floor are then painted out. Although they were accurate, they ended up being too distracting in the final image. Which of course leaves us with this lovely hallway that we have seen for quite a while. This is one of the first images they actually released when they were announcing, or at least hinting at, this new DLC. We finally get to move on for a bit of a tease about the third origin that we have yet had very little information on. I am of course talking about the Payback Origin, which heavily features Minamar Specialised Industries. This was the last piece of art that Lloyd did that involved MSI. It was great fun to be able to show the ship that he had first concepted within an actual scene. Some of you might recognise this as being similar to a shot from the very recently released teaser trailer for First Contact. He is proud to say that his image came first. Possible inspiration for that trailer? Who knows? The brief that he was given for the image was that he was asked that they could see the MSI Flagship looming over a city whilst it was in space. There was some confusion as to whether the ship should be out in space or lower over the city, and here are some of his first stabs at the composition. Eventually they settled on variant A, as they could show the ship in space, but from the perspective of someone on the planet, rather than B, where the ship is clearly in the foreground and in front of some of those buildings, and then of course C and D, where the ship is kind of in the atmosphere, above the atmosphere in space, orbiting high above the planet. I definitely think they made the right call here. A is both quite interesting yet eerily menacing. You've got what is some sort of ship in the daytime above the sky of a possible city that could even be from modern day Earth, though of course it isn't. It's entirely generated by the artist. So speaking of that city, Lloyd had to go out and make some buildings. To create them, he chose to use a new technique of projecting satellite image textures from real-world Earth cities onto simple geometry, resulting in some very convincing looking buildings, as you can see right now. And actually, these are really convincing, knowing that it's just a texture on some simple shapes. We've got some, cuboids here, possibly with some extra surfaces in places, but any extra detail doesn't really exist. It's simply the texturing placed on the top of this geometric shape. The next step was rather simple. Lloyd already had a 3D model of the MSI Flagship, so he rendered it with matching lighting and combined all the elements in Photoshop to get these elements you see before you. Then he had some fun creating alien script to add life to the signs on the buildings. Most of this can't be seen in the in-game image, as it is of course too small, but he felt it was still necessary to put it in so that the final image had the right feel to it when it is eventually scaled down. He was very happy with how the ship looks in this finished piece. All of the dark areas are naturally obscured by the blue of the sky, just like how you can't see the dark side of the moon when you look at it during the day. And I must admit, I really like that effect. It very realistically presents the ship as an object in the sky, or at least above the sky of this planet. So what do we now know for certain about Payback? Well, Payback is an origin that seems to be hinting at some sort of Independence Day style shenanigans, possibly. We know that the Minamar Specialised Industries have turned up with what is in essence a giant floating weapons platform in the sky above your planet, above your homeworld, and then some bad stuff went down. This could of course be a reference to the mothership from Independence Day. That kind of event could be going down. Possibly as well, MSI have a whole fleet of these darn things, but I don't think so, given it has the title Flagship. Could we be getting an entirely new specialized set of ship designs, or at least ship imagery, ship profiles for the Minamar Specialized Industries? I think that's unlikely, especially given that it is not playable by the actual players. This is an NPC faction, an AI empire that's going to be doing all this, but we can still live in hope. If you'd like to find out more about the new Dark Forest Origin, Fear of the Dark, the new artifact rework coming with 3.7, and the brand new Colossus beam weapon that will return the AI to monkey, click the video on screen now.